We are back after a great weekend off. Excited to get into it, discussing everything going on in the markets, the latest earnings, what's happening with Nvidia, interest rate expectations, all of that good stuff, and much more today on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back, everybody. As we get going today, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Nothing that Kevin or I say is financial advice, so please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kev, we had a solid weekend in crypto, and then the market's open today, and we have seen a lot of movement down. It's trying to rebound now, actually. ETH is on its way back up. Bitcoin is recovering a bit. But the biggest move was in TradFi with Nvidia, down almost 5% as we speak. Once again, another one that got down even further earlier in the day, just a massive red candle. So we're going to discuss that with earnings coming up tomorrow. We now have people finally wrapping their head around the fact that maybe the Fed has to raise rates again. We can talk about that in a little bit. But first off, good to see you. Welcome back. What has your attention today as we kick off a shortened week here in the markets?
There's so much to keep an eye on. Nvidia is obviously one that I've been watching over the weekend. Ever since Super Microcomputer, how that played out Friday, going into the market close. And, today we're seeing that it had a pretty red morning. Nvidia did as well, trying to buy it back a little bit here. But the other thing that's really been keeping my interest is what happened yesterday with Discover and Capital One. So another merger, which a lot of people think is bullish, right? A lot of people love bullish mergers. I forget what the two banks were that created Truist, but usually mergers are not a sign of a bull market. You tend to see those right towards before it collapses, right? Look at JetBlue and Spirit. That was one that they hoped had gone through. Regulators said, nope, sorry, can't do it. Absolutely tanked Spirit's stock. So we're seeing Capital One and Discover do pretty well today. Discover is actually doing extremely well. I just want to share this before we get into anything too, because they decided to announce this on President's Day when the markets are closed. So there was no chance that there was going to be any type of way in this the stock to be traded other than limit up, just shot straight up. But for $35 billion, that seems what the deal is supposed to be. I don't know if it's going to go through. I think a lot of people are definitely hoping that it goes through. Both parties agreed to it. The reason that a lot of people are buying Discover is because of this right down here. Under the terms of the deal, Discover shareholders would receive 1.0192 Capital One shares for each of theirs. It's a pretty big deal. People definitely trying to take advantage of it. Now, the question is, do people take advantage of this as a trade, or do people take advantage of this and try and hold this until the deal goes through so they can get their shares, right? Well, it really depends, because I think that there's someone that we need to wait and see has to say something. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the right person when it says Warren. But our friend Warren urges regulators to block Capital One Discover deal. I'm really excited to see what comes of this, right? Because if they do block this, then what happens to all these people that were buying into Discover? Well, they're probably going to sell the shit out of those shares because they're not getting their Capital One shares. So we're seeing options contracts kind of being devalued here. And I'm keeping an eye on it because that might be an opportunity to play. If people undervalue the possibility that this deal doesn't go through, there might be somewhere to, pick up some cheap contracts and maybe take some advantage of what could happen. But I want to remind people what happened with Spirit and JetBlue. That deal fell through and Spirit dropped significantly. I think it was like 47% in one trading day. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Discover, but we know that Discover had a really bad earnings season and their outlook was really bad. And we know that the majority of people who use both Capital One and Discover are middle-class individuals, and we saw the consumer credit is coming down significantly. There's definitely some type of siphoning that is going on in the credit industry, and we have to keep an eye on that, because if this deal doesn't go through and this isn't a secret bailout and the regulators do come in and stop this, that could be, blood in the streets for some of these big credit card companies, right? So it's something that we need to keep an eye on. It's one that's been keeping my interest. So I don't think anything is done until it's done on paper and the stock stops trading as DFS. But definitely one we're going to keep an eye on in this show, because that could be absolute chaos impending.
Yeah, I know that you've been, eye on the financial sector and everything happening there. What else? We've seen a lot with the Bitcoin ETFs as far as inflows coming in. Michael Saylor saying that he's going to be buying Bitcoin for eternity. So, more optimism right there. We've seen a pullback a bit in the altcoins. We don't have a whole lot on the docket this week from an economic data standpoint. Pretty slow overall. A few Fed officials speaking, but it's not going to be a data-driven week. I think you got Nvidia earnings tomorrow, and that's going to be really kind of bringing an end to this latest earnings season. So in weeks like this, where we don't rely on data to dictate where the market is going, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact outside of the earnings tomorrow?
Damn, that's what I was going to say. When we look at everything like that, it doesn't seem like any news tends to come out until the market's closed. And if the market does react to it, it has all of the overnight markets to kind of let that price things in. So I think a lot of what we're probably going to see, if there is any type of volatility, would probably come from where liquidity stems from, right? I think that if anything, keep an eye on the reverse repos for the banks, seeing what other banks globally are doing. There's already seems like German banks are positioning for absolute chaos. They're expecting there to be a fallout in terms of commercial real estate. We're seeing that a lot of banks in Japan, mainly I think it's Azora, that's the name, is already preparing for U.S. defaults or problems in U.S. commercial real estate. So I think the banking sector remains to be the number one thing. I also think that we need to take a look at some of the other equity, sectors. Like we've been looking at semiconductors and AI. Super microcomputer started to tank. That brought Nvidia down this morning too. So if one of those decides to go, it could be the formation of a bubble popping. I'm not saying it is. I think the bubble pops when liquidity dries up significantly, like it's gone, and that's coming fairly soon. I think, or at least the methods in which they find liquidity are going to dry up. But in a week like this, I think if anything, it's going to be probably issues with liquidity, or at least signs that liquidity is drying up. Maybe the bond market starts to say, you know what, let's start to take some of these and lock these 4% gains in. And worst comes worse, we see, I don't know, black swan or something like that. But earnings are going to be the number one thing, in my opinion. It seems like the market is made Nvidia the most important stock in the world, and it's just waiting to see what Nvidia has to say and that outlook. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be good or bad, but it's a 9% change. I think that's what most people are pricing in, whether it goes up or down, Nvidia stock in the market tomorrow or post market.
Interesting. Okay. I know that a lot of the movement today is people, taking some profits off the table, which is never a bad idea. Smart. Look at that. Who would think taking profits, as opposed to
holding it?
Jim Cramer, who's just like, we don't sell Nvidia, we just hold Nvidia. I was like, okay, man, that's cool. You've been wrong about like everything lately. So, okay.
Let's say this about Nvidia though. First thing, these prices you might not see for 10 years again. If it is a bubble, right? That's kind of the deal with Nvidia and something like super microcomputer being at 1080, currently at like 7 something. Some of these people are probably going to round trip this shit for a long time. You don't necessarily know if it's going to ever go back that high too. Like anything could happen. A better company could come out and do what they do better, and they end up being the one where all the money flows into. So just be cautious with what you're doing out there, because listening to Jim Cramer that's a death sentence for your portfolio.
Fair enough. We did get Walmart earnings today. We can talk about that for a second. Those came in very strong. Another good quarter for them on the back of holiday sales. They're acquiring Vizio to help with their ad revenue. So, Walmart making some moves. We should get Home Depot's reporting. I don't know if they already did this morning.
They did.
Okay.
I didn't see the.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't see the earnings for Home Depot. I know that they reported. I think Chris actually sent me some stuff this morning. I was looking at it, but I know that a few things that have also been happening with Home Depot. I know that I think it's housing. Like the recent downturn in housing starts has definitely impacted in Home Depot, and I think their outlook for moving forward. But the other thing is Walmart too, right? I mean, Walmart shot straight up, and they had a really strong quarter. Question is, why is Walmart doing extremely well here, right? Is it because people have less money to spend? Is it because, maybe, they're even saying too that they expect the consumer to be weaker moving forward too. So it seems like we're rallying on the past and not necessarily on the outlook when we're looking at Walmart. It's still up, 3.13% today, but you can see there was a harsh rejection up there too. So let's pull up Home Depot real quick and see how that stock is reacting. Looks like it's pretty good.
A little bit, like nothing monumental. Yeah, it's like up less than 0.5%. So I don't think, it was a lukewarm reception to their earnings today.
Yeah, and again, if people are strapped for cash, are they going to be doing home improvement? something that you have to kind of keep in mind too.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation with Nvidia for tomorrow because they are one when they have like stellar earnings, it'll shoot up, obviously. But we've also seen many quarters previously that they can beat expectations, but it's still not be good enough. Like the expectations are so sky, especially this time around. Like the expectations are sky high. It feels like everything is hanging on them. That I don't know what they're going to have to do in order to beat those and to send the stock higher. So everyone has. This is to me a like trade. Going against the broad sentiment. Like everyone has a buy rating on it right now. Everyone has a price target now of 780, 800, 840, like crazy valuations. And it just comes down to like the herd mentality is so bullish Nvidia. And I get it. I get why. But can it really keep going like this? And I just think like it's running out of steam now. And there's a lot of I don't know. I sold some of my position and I'm like really on the fence about if I want to keep any of it or if I just want to be like, you know what? I do think we're in for a, look at some of the gaps on that chart too. Like 350 in the next 6 months wouldn't shock me at all for Nvidia.
Well, that's very smart too. And again, I got to zoom out to see the full gap, right? I don't think we have any support until maybe around 500. I'm not being an asshole here. Like I'm just reasonably look at this fucking chart. The last time you found any support, it's 27 below where we currently are, right? It's a huge run up that we saw. And I keep bringing up super microcomputer because if we look at that chart, and I have to pull up this so we can see how Nvidia could react. I mean, this is violent. This is extremely violent. I still love my chart that I made where you fuckers are buying literally the top. I should have shorted from up there, but this is 100% leverage, and we're seeing that it's bouncing back pretty good today. It came down here, but is it only bouncing back because Nvidia's earnings aren't out yet? Maybe people think this is an opportunity. I think this is the time we need to have some forward, an outlook longer than just the daily chart. If we look at the weekly. I mean, the last time you found supports right down here around $350, right? And now if we go back to NVIDIA and see what this looks like on the weekly chart, it's no different. It's no different at all, right? Last time you found support, it's right down here around $500 or so. Now the question is, if we lose that, then yeah, the next level of support, like you said, between 320 and 350. So it's really going to come down to, are there going to be enough people to buy into this at the right time? Also, the other question is, and the thing that I'm so bearish on tech stocks, and I think it's coming to an end for them because of what's happening in the banking system, is that leverage is going away. This is all leverage that shot Nvidia up this much, right? People were that whole narrative just shot this thing straight up, and I get it. Nvidia's a company that's pretty much holding up the entire stock market right now. I think the concentration in the top 10% of stocks right now is higher than 1929. So it's the all-time high for how concentrated some of these stocks are in the indexes. Obviously, what happened in 1929, I'm not going to explain that's self-explanatory. But when you look at this here, I mean, there's a lot to go down to find support. You can't just go up forever. And if we look at the stochastic RSI on NVIDIA, it's 92 and 97. Sure, could go a little bit more to the overbought, but are we getting greedy at that point? 100%. So looking at this here and, if that 500 range, I mean, you can even go a little bit lower. 450 or so, that's where our next huge level of support is. So if we aren't able to sustain this, the leverage cuts from underneath us in the banking sector, and this starts to sell off very similar to how we saw Friday and even this morning for a super microcomputer. I mean, we're going to have to find support somewhere. It's not up here. It's not up here. Earnings, once they go away, you don't have anything for 3 months that's going to pretty much hold this thing up, right? I think that speculation of what's going to happen could push the price up a little bit higher. Maybe people shorted it today so they can get in a better position, ride that 9% up, and then it's just volatile for the next few weeks until something happens. But right now, this is a dangerous stock. I don't want to touch NVIDIA. I don't want to touch super microcomputer because I know where it's going. However, that trade could unwind faster than most people think. Case in point being going back to this one. Look at that wick to straight up. This is one of the worst wicks I've ever seen in my life. Especially for a top. I mean, I'm not saying that's the top, but I'm also saying how could that not be the top? It's a dangerous game right now, playing with NVIDIA, playing with any of these tech stocks like that just shot straight up. That amount of leverage is going to disappear at some point. The other thing that we talked about vendor financing with Nvidia. I'm just going to share this. I sent it with you last night. And again, this is just something that I read online, and we'll look into it a little bit more, but there's a company called American Cannabis Company. They're kind of a consulting agency, and they've done a bunch of weird stuff in the past, but their market cap's about $2.2 million. On paper, apparently, allegedly, it says that, I can't find it here right now. Damn it. Here it is. They bought $1.1 billion worth of GPUs. That was their plan. All right. That doesn't make a lot of sense here. How does a company that's worth $2 million plan to buy something that's worth 1.1 billion? It doesn't necessarily add up. Vendor financing obviously gives credit that's marked down as potential sales moving forward, but the sales don't necessarily happen until the money's in their account, but it can still be marked as we had the sale. Something that we're going to have to keep an eye on when it comes to Nvidia, because this is something that we saw with Nortel. And again, people like to say, well, Nvidia never did this for years, right? Nvidia's been slowly gaining traction. Absolutely. But also everyone promised to buy everything during that entire 2021 bubble. There was money flying everywhere. So people who didn't have enough money on hand could easily get that money, and they could have just marked it down on their balance sheets as like, okay, this is revenue coming in, right? And then it just keeps tumbling and tumbling. Nvidia's down year over year in terms of corporate profits. We also know that Nvidia's revenue doesn't make sense compared to its market cap. 16 to $18 billion worth of revenue against 1.8 or so $trillion market cap. Almost a million. If it was $1 million market cap, I'd say, yeah, Nvidia to the moon. But no, it's $1.8 trillion, and it's one of the most concentrated stocks in the major indexes. So there's just a lot of things you have to keep in mind with Nvidia. It's become the world's most important stock. I think tomorrow is going to be really important. I think that 9% ratio that the investors are pricing in, that it can go up or down, is fair. I think that there is going to be some volatility with it tomorrow. Whether earnings are good or bad, outlook is also going to be a huge factor. But I do think that the AI and the semiconductor phase is coming close to an end. And I think that's coming to an end probably because of the leverage in the system, and also just the fact that not everything can just go up forever. We need to find that support. We haven't tested it once.
Let's talk about Apple for a minute here. Seeing reports that even the diehards are starting to sour on the Apple Vision Pro due to a number of factors. Who would have thought?
I love this joke. It's so stupid.
The people, it's uncomfortable. It's hurting their eye. Like all of these things. Like, yeah, no shit.
What'd you think?
What'd you think was going to happen? So we're starting to see Apple lose favor a little bit there. I'm not really sure what else they have in their bag of tricks to turn this thing around. It's down a little bit on the day. Like most other stocks right now, it's trying to rally into the market close. But I think that's one, Kevin, I know that you still have your short open on Apple.
Yeah, until the March 15th. It's really key right here. What do you think? Should I close it? I don't think I should. Not at all. It's right here. I mean, it's in the money right now. It's right at this 181 level. It's got to break this 200 EMA right down there. It's oversold on the daily. However, this is a head and shoulders pattern. That's clear and cut. I mean, this neckline, if it loses this, then it's probably going to come down a lot lower. And the fact that the 200 is kind of its last leg of support, we're going to be looking a lot lower, maybe 170. If not, maybe even 167. Now, by March 15th, when I got to close it, I don't know if that's going to stay open or not, if it's going to come all the way down here. But I do think it will be under 180. And we'll see if, let's take a look at the weekly, actually. Let's see if there's any support down there. Weekly support's at 178. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, too. But I definitely see a world where volatility picks up. We could see a lot of the tech sectors sell off, especially if Nvidia sells off. I mean, Nvidia kind of brought down a lot of the market today, too, right? And all tech stocks were down significantly at some point this morning, but they're buying it back right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what Apple has to say. But I completely agree with you, dude. There is nothing in Apple's back pocket right now what they could be doing to generate more revenue. I don't see it one bit. The Vision Pro was a stupid idea. I mean, it's a great idea. It's just you're buying the stupidest version of it because you're buying at the top of the bull market and you're also buying it the first gen. So it's not going to be great. It's not going to be comfortable. You got a wire sticking out of the side of your head.
You were probably too young. You were probably too young for this. Did you ever play the Nintendo Virtual Boy?
The red and black screen thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played it once a long time ago.
Man, talk about you would play that for like, I remember playing that for like half a minute, like half an hour, like Mario Tennis, and stepping out of it. I thought my eyes were bleeding. Like, and that's just what I envision the Apple Vision Pro. Like, you take it off and you're just seeing red everywhere, and you're like just a massive headache from the overstimulation there. But anyway, let's move on. I don't even know where I'm going. Let's wrap it up with a little look at crypto. I think that is worth doing. We're seeing, like I said, ETH hit 3,000 to start the day. It pulled back. It's buying back up now. Where will that go? Who the fuck knows? Alts are down on the day, 3 to 4%. We're seeing Solana at that 107 level. It wicked all the way down to 104 before it bounced a bit. Where are you watching in the crypto market right now? So you got the Coinbase chart pulled up. Like, what's on that the agenda there for you?
Got to pull this up real quick first before we get into crypto. Obviously, there's a lot going on in crypto right now. Got to keep an eye on that. But with Coinbase, right after earnings, obviously they're selling off pretty hard here, right? I do think that we said they wouldn't go above 208. Currently sitting at 170, and we said that back at 185. So it's $15 down from that. So as of right now, still in this 5-wave move to the downside. This would be maybe our continuation to the wave 5. So we could see new lows for Coinbase, but that has to coincide with a lot of things, right? Obviously, crypto is not down today. I mean, some of the alt market is, but Bitcoin is more correlated with Coinbase, or Coinbase is more correlated with Bitcoin than anything, even Ethereum if it's going up. But if we look at Bitcoin right now, you can see that it's kind of hovering around this level. And it's just sideways trading, right? When I look at this and see how much it's just kind of sitting up here, and we talked about that Wyckoff distribution pattern where, it comes up, it's testing these levels, breaks above it, and people think that's the top, which we personally thought, maybe not you, but I thought it was the top. But then we saw that it came down. It didn't put in a pattern right down here that made a lot of sense, right? This was the thing where I was like, you know what, this could definitely run up above 50K. And it did. It ran up an insane amount. And now we're sitting up here. So this could be the last leg of it. Could it push up a little bit higher? Yes, no, who knows? But it seems like as long as Tether continues to print, which they printed another $1 billion this morning, seems like that this price could stay elevated for a period of time. Now, when we look at this and then we look at Bitcoin dominance is testing the 50 moving average right here, right? We're going to have to watch to see how this plays out. Obviously, ETH, it bounced off of it, but we know that ETH being strong here as well. It's really interesting to see if maybe that dominance does come down and does allow some of these alts to rally. Right now, it does not seem like it's doing that. It seems like ETH dominance and Bitcoin dominance are kind of having a stranglehold across all of the alt market. But we're going to have to wait and see. I don't necessarily like ETH up here. And the reason is because if we look in the shorter time frames, let's go to the hourly. All right, 30,000, right? As soon as we got to 30,003, rejected. Second time came up to about, closer to that 30,000 level, got rejected once again. 3,000, 30,000, 3,000. It's all the same. Just 1 0.
You give me $30,000 ETH, and I am selling everything, and you're never hearing from me again. I will just disappear.
I wouldn't be surprised. Might be a while until we get there, but it's definitely possible. Maybe one day, maybe. Yeah, so I think that there is a lot of resistance here at this $3,000 level, right? $3,000 is a nice psychological level. You also probably
it's a huge psychological barrier too. Like, because I was looking at it and we closed on Sunday. ETH closed at its highest levels since April of 2022 on the weekly, which is like for a lot of people who have been holding through this, this last almost 2 years. If they were buying at 1,500 and now you got a chance at 2x, like you're going to see a lot of sell pressure at that psychological barrier.
Oh, 100%. And again, when was the last time it was up here? April 2022, right?
Yeah, exactly. What I just said.
It's a long, but I know what you said, but I'm saying it's a long period of time for people to be sitting in ETH and just being like losing, right? People bought that dip and they thought like, hey, this is going to go up further. Now they're back at, at zero. And zero profit, zero loss, and it's like, well, what do I do? Do I just sell and get out, or do I let it ride?
We also have, I'm finishing up my taxes for last year, so we got people who had gains on there. They can sell them, deal with that tax problem next year, but also have to pay a liability from 2023. So it's just a really good opportunity, and a lot of people I think are using this opportunity to take some profit on ETH on some of these. I mean, for fuck's sake, man, Solana ran from sub $10 to over 100. Like people need to take profit. It's going to happen. And now are we going to see the liquidity to continue that move up, or has it completely run out of steam?
I don't think the right people are going to take profit at the right time. I think institutions take profit first, and then obviously it's a race to the bottom because everyone thinks that, they're being told everything's great, that this market's going to continue rallying. They're seeing the price continue to go up. $3,000 ETH. They're like, oh shit. How many tweets I saw this morning? It's like, check your portfolio. And it's talking about how ETH is going to the next level, 35 or some shit like that. I don't know. I'm having a macro view with ETH, right? I think that you made a great point with a lot of tax liabilities. And, it's smart to sell here, but I also think that more selling pressure is probably going to cause more selling pressure. It's kind of the unfortunate thing when you see that. We saw it back in June of 2022. So what is that down here? Yeah, June, July 2022. People started selling in May, and they kept selling until they sold until they formed a new bottom, right? When we look at this here, I continue to think that we have 5 waves to the downside, and we have 3 waves here. It's maybe even the WXWYZ or something like that, or WXWYZ. That seems more likely, and that's a corrective pattern. That'd be our B wave. But I think we still have our C wave, and because this pattern is kind of playing out that way, and we're looking at this in the macro view, this took from 22 to 24. Maybe within a year or so, 12 to 14 months, we could be at the bottom of the C leg. And this structure, the fact that we're probably topping out somewhere around here, let me pull up the monthly. Yeah, I mean, the monthly on ETH is ridiculous. It's 196. If this pattern does play out for ETH, I mean, I talked about it for a long time, and I've not changed one bit what I've said in my targets are for ETH. I still think that 636 level is very possible because of how this is playing out, right? B wave is not as strong as we anticipated, but it's definitely enough for the point we're not going to get a double bottom, I don't think. I think that there's a good chance that we are going to push a little bit lower, and we're probably going to hit that $600 to $700 ETH, and that's possible, right? You don't want to hear that right now, but when you see everything being so extremely overbought, you got the structure here. Even on the monthly, I can actually see the structure. It's A, B, C. So I don't know, whatever the structure decides to be, so be it. The question is, are we able to push up further past here? Are we able to push up for Bitcoin past all-time highs? I don't know. I don't think so. That's just one guy's opinion, but I know that liquidity is exiting the system like crazy in terms of the banking sectors. We're not seeing, these leverage going to be as easily accessible. And, to wrap this up, we talked about Bitcoin, the alts are obviously selling off here because of Bitcoin dominance. People need to take profit. But I do want to show you one thing when it comes to demand and why liquidity is such an issue and why some of these banks globally are also trying to find more capital. This is, you're not even going to be able to read this article, but at least look at what's going on in China. The mortgage rates being cut for loans. They're trying to revitalize these property markets, right? I'm not saying that they're cutting rates, the PBOC is cutting rates, but I'm saying that these mortgage rates are being cut. And that's kind of a good step showing you that demand is drying up significantly, and they have to do something in order to meet that demand. Obviously, cutting rates to allow them to borrow at a lower level. It's going to be the same thing because right now it's unsustainable for some of these people to continue borrowing and putting into the market and seeing if they can make money. And that goes for crypto and equities. At some point, the demand is going to fall. We're going to start seeing that the banks are definitely pulling back here. Now, this is just in China. When we see it in the U.S. market, it's probably going to be from the central banks, the Fed cutting. People are going to think that's going to be, QE instantly. It just means that there's a lot of stress and they're not willing to borrow for a period of time, right? So when I see this and see how much we've pushed up in terms of crypto, and we're seeing where we are today and how fast we moved down from the all-time highs in 2021, it's not impossible for it to happen all over again. I think that's type of, ego that a lot of people have, that, they happen once, it won't happen again. This time is different. It's going to really come back to haunt a lot of people. So I think having a long-term horizon, looking at these structures, also understanding more than just what the technical analysis is saying in the shorter time frames, taking a look what's going on in the globe. Demand is dropping like crazy right now. You have to, at some point, the monetary system is going to call bullshit on the equity markets. And when that does come, there's not going to be a lot of capital flowing into things that are risky. It's going to be flowing into sure things, treasury bills, stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting. I just think that right now for Bitcoin and Ethereum, nothing has invalidated the opportunity within the next 12 to 14 months for us to see new lows in both of those markets. And I think kind of the hysteria that we're seeing in the equities and, ETH at 3,000, finding rejection right there, and then Bitcoin shooting up north of 50,000 again. We're kind of getting to that place where we can lock a lot of people in at the top.
All right. Well said there. Appreciate that breakdown. We're going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. I'm thinking we'll probably start a little bit later than usual so we can be live for Nvidia earnings. I think that is our best bet. So keep an eye out. We'll probably be starting at like 15 before the top of the hour, give ourselves maybe around like market close so that we can have like 15 minutes to cover what happened in the day. And then we'll get into NVIDIA earnings from there. So keep an eye out for the reminder, hit the notification button for us if you haven't yet. Also, like today's stream, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, all of that good stuff. Ace, Chris, Randy, appreciate you guys being here with us as always. Have an awesome day, everybody. Stay safe out there, and we will see you tomorrow.
Take care, everyone.